and are just some of the words that you may hear in today's podcast. Enjoy!
Hello and welcome to the Perfect Information Podcast, a board game podcast that was born ready with me, Ben Maddox, and a man who for the furnishment of a few bucks will croon at your funeral.
Yorgos Panayotidis.
I was locked out of the Perfect Information Towers all week.
Yes, that is true.
And now
that's what you get for talking back.
But I'm glad you let me back in.
I'm nothing if not magnanimous.
You're nothing if not the most perfect pronouncer of words in the English language I've ever met in my natural life, Georgios.
Yes, that is true as well.
Not to mention the life I often spend suspended above my body, watching my form as I sleep, because I'm a planeswalker.
Are you now? You're a goddamn nerd.
I wanted to say astral plane projector, but it was the first word that came to my head. And unfortunately, this is all I do now, Georgios. So basically, I just take words from board games.
You should. Yeah, they have the best words. They have dice. They have the plural of dice, which is dice. These dice. Yeah, that's
3 dice.
That's 3 dice. That's true. Yeah, dice, these nuts. That's great. Yeah.
Worker placement.
Which is something we're going to see in the future. I'm sure of it.
Lionel Richie which is an obscure mechanic in a Ryan Knizia game from 1972. Georgios.
Yes, not a lot of people know that. I think there was the fishing expansion for Robo Rally.
That's right.
Trout expansion. Yeah, and Lionel Richie.
That's what you
Ryan Knizia's Lionel Richie game. Yeah.
It's not a Lionel Richie game, it's just a mechanic.
No, yeah.
Lionel Richie the Meeples.
Yes, that's what you do. It's the Lionel Richie game, like a worker placement game. It's its own genre. It's just one entry.
Lionel Richie games.
Yeah, the Lionel Richie game.
He denies ever making it. And it's gone so far, Georgios, this man has so much power.
Yeah.
If you go onto BGG and try and find it, you won't find it, Georgios. No. He scoured it from the historical records, Georgios.
Well, I didn't want to tell you, but we did get a cease and desist letter from Ryan Knizia because of that. We might actually have to edit this out.
Yeah, I think it was that letter that you wrote saying, stop wearing the bow ties, you twat.
Well, man, to be fair, I signed it in your name, so maybe, yeah.
Well, let's say it's a combination of both.
Probably.
Anyway, Georgios, so you rummaged through your cerebellum, as you're wont to do.
Yes, what he's trying to say is I made a thinky in my sitting room. And
you came up with the idea for this week's topic.
I did indeed.
Can you elucidate for the good people at home?
Not really, but I'll try. The idea is basically this. There are lots of concepts, rules, mechanics, even genres in board gaming that have a bad reputation, that have vocal opponents that that more than just don't like these kind of things. They're actively opposed to them and they will avoid them wherever possible, and they will think less of a game if it includes them. Examples being, take that mechanics, the idea of player elimination, or the ever unpopular, you drew a card and you now lose a turn mechanic.
Okay, so I want to take this back and just get to the heart of this.
Right.
So accepted thinking says that these certain things are generally bad.
Or at least controversial, yes.
Right. Why do they end up being put in the bad bucket, do you think?
Well, the not quite as sympathetic interpretation would be that they cause frustration and people either can't or don't want to deal with frustration in board games. And I'm aware that sounds a bit awful, but I'm trying to limit it down a bit because I'm trying to say frustration as part of a gaming experience is normal. I think it's to a certain extent good.
Intrinsic. No?
Intrinsic, if you want, yeah. And it becomes an issue when it sort of becomes too much, becomes overwhelming, when the frustration element pushes past a certain limit and colors the entire experience. To a certain extent, this can be a fault of the design, because the design sort of puts these things in front of you and then just hits you on the head if you do the wrong thing. But on the other hand, it can also be an issue with the players who and I'm not necessarily excluding myself from this group, who occasionally have trouble just dealing with a frustrating situation in a game, who will get really mad, who will sort of pout, who will sort of disengage from the game completely to an extent that when the game is over, they will start blaming the game for being bad, as opposed to going, right, maybe it really affected me for whatever reasons, but I can see why it would be part of the game. And, I just had a bad time because things didn't go my way.
But surely not every person who's frustrated with these things that are the sort of roll and move, I guess, is the archetypical one that is held up as this big, bad, useless, archaic thing of board game design. Surely not everyone who thinks roll and move is bad is someone who gets frustrated and is inclined to let their emotions get the better of them and blame the game. Surely there's something intrinsic to the thing in itself.
Oh yeah, I think with roll and move, it also has a lot to do with the fact that it's been a mainstay in board game design for decades, when board game design, to be fair, was kind of shit, where you get copies of very, very cheap cash into existing IP, to existing intellectual property, with just, a board, a track to move around with effects on it, and then you just play a roll and move game. It's a mechanic that can have its place. I think Formula D is a game that is a roll and move game, but it's fun. It's interesting. It's engaging. It can be useful, but it also can be very, very, it can just feel dull and frustrating, and just the work of a designer who just couldn't be asked.
Well, I think there's one word. The reason I think some of these particular things become bywords for bad.
Right.
And I don't even mean bywords for frustration, because sometimes it's not a frustrating thing. Sometimes you just simply think, this is bad. I'm not frustrated. I'm bored. I'm apathetic.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't always promote anger or frustration.
But frustration does feed into boredom, though.
But indifference isn't frustration.
No, but indifference can be the result of small frustrations. But that's semantics.
But nevertheless, it's not always a flip the table, get angry, this game is shit moment, right?
Yes.
And I think if you look at the ones that you cited, it comes down to a notion of control to me.
Yeah.
They don't allow you to have control over your game. And so they become frustrating. And the way people explain this is they say, it's too random.
Yeah.
And they don't really know what random, when they say random, a lot of people don't really know they do know what they mean, but they don't know what they mean. But I think what they actually mean is control was taken out of my hands to such an extent that I felt I had no agency, right?
Yes, I think some frustrations definitely comes down to the fact that you feel the game, or your expectations are, or your buy-in is that you have some sort of control over what happens, over your attempt to reach your goal, and then rules or design choices take that effectiveness away from you, and that's frustrating, especially if you can't plan for it, if you can't avoid it, and if it eventually feels like the game does, or the things that happen anyway, and you have no control over them. So I think you're right. To a certain extent, control plays an important role, but it also ties in together. Being frustrated at the loss of control ties in with the idea of expectations, or more than expectations, what's being promised in a game. Because I'm thinking of a game like Dungeon Quest, which we made, I think, kind of fun of last episode as a game I want to play, and I've since played it again. And I'm going to go on the record now, and you're free to challenge me, and I'll write down a long blog post about this. It'll be long. I think this is a good game. I think, non-ironic, it's a good game. There's no yes, it's trashy, but it's not. I'm not saying it's funny, silly good. It's just a good game that does things that we just not seem to have forgotten to enjoy, and which is just risk taking, which is just, being ballsy, which is just about table talk, all these things and this game, Dungeon Quest, literally has one significant decision you can make in the entire game, and everything else is basically out of your hands, but it's still a good game. And that kind of tied into my idea of, let's look at these game mechanics. Let's look at these concepts that we generally assume are bad in board games, and think about where they're used sensibly, because randomness is used very, very cleverly in Dungeon Quest. Roll and move is used well in Formula D. Play elimination is used very well, I believe, but I think we argued about this, in Bang the card game. And there are a lot of games that use these rules or these ideas well and cleverly and in a way that's justifiable. So you're still free to not like the game because it's not to your style. Nobody's arguing that, but it's hard to stand there and claim this is a bad game because it includes player elimination.
Well, the thing is, what it seems to me is that when these kind of core things are implemented in a poor way,
right,
there is a universal feeling of injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the big key here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are games, we played a game today in which, until I realised what was going on, I felt a really strong sense of injustice and I blamed the game for that. Then I realised there was a couple of reasons, probably down to my error. But there's something intrinsic about these concepts that seem to be unjust.
Right.
That seem to be unfair. That you come away from it thinking, even if you were bored, but you just think, I've lost all agency here. I've lost all control. There's literally nothing I can do because this central core concept is at its heart false. Is at its heart wrong. Is that a valid proposition?
I think the idea of injustice is very interesting because it seems to me that it all comes down to this reaction that rules are arbitrary. When you think about it, of course they are. It's a board game. Every rule in a board game is arbitrarily decided by the designer.
Well, the point is not arbitrary, is it?
It is arbitrary.
The hope, they come up with it, but that doesn't make it arbitrary. The hope is...
It doesn't?
No. The hope is that the creation and the iteration makes them not arbitrary, makes them positioned in a particular place. So the effects of them don't make you go, oh, come on, that's just silly.
Again, I point you to Dungeon Quest. But no, I think... The collection of rules, I would still say, is arbitrary. And yes, I think the implicit assumption...
Can you explain what you mean by arbitrary here? Because I don't understand what you mean by...
It's literally somebody sitting down deciding this is the rule I want to put in this game. It's not... I don't refer to some abstract concept of fairness or justice, or I don't refer to plausibility or anything and all that. I don't use an external measure to figure out which rule is the right one. It comes down to personal, like what I want to do.
So dictatorial in the sense of arbitrary power, as opposed to just randomly thrown in a bag.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
That's what I meant. Yeah. And the idea is basically that the effects can feel unfair and unjust. Yes. And again, Dungeon Quest, I think, is a brilliant example. The last time actually we played this together, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe we didn't. A friend of ours was playing there. He played this game for the first time.
I mean, the problem is whenever I come over your place, it's either playing games or just necking on the sofa for hours. So I never know when it is.
Why do you draw a distinction between the two?
Well, I don't move meeples when I'm moving your neeples.
Right, fair enough. So we're playing Dungeon Quest basically, and he just gets beaten down every other room with bad effects. It's like he moves one step and it's the worst room he could possibly be in, and then he moves again and he falls into a hole, into the catacombs, and then he draws a card, and of course it's a dangerous monster. It's the most dangerous monster you can find, and it goes on. It's like the silliest story of bad luck ever, and of course he loses horribly. But not at any point did we or he stop laughing, because it's a fantastic game. But the arbitrariness, again, not the arbitrariness, but the injustice, the unfairness comes down to whether the game tells you anything differently. Like if I imagine playing a game by, let's say, Uwe Rosenberg, when I play a very, very tightly designed Euro, and all of a sudden I draw a random card and everything blows up, or I roll a die and I lose half of whatever it is that I have, and I just get beaten down over and over again, I would be frustrated. I would be so annoyed, I'd be so angry. I might actually start trying to flip the table, but probably not, because it's a big table. But
you're a strong guy. Those army worms, when they're clasped gently but firmly around me, Georgios, I feel nothing but security, safety, and a little bit of half bone.
Half bone only. Well, I need to work on that.
Well, I mean, you need to manipulate the machinery to get it working, Georgios.
You're really, really trying hard to sort of scare away any homophobes we have, don't you? I mean, in our listenership, I'm fine with that.
I assume that our listenership are completely refined, decent human beings, and they wouldn't be that type of person anyway. So, what are you trying to say our listeners are like, Georgios?
I'm always assuming that they are the breadth of all board gaming.
I don't think we have a sub-chan on 4chan. I don't know what they're called. But I don't think we have one, Georgios.
Yeah. See, it's like this thing, is the rule something or other on the internet. If you can think of it, there's a fetish for it.
But the thing is, we're a couple of beta cucks, so...
Well, speak for yourself.
I don't even know what it means, Joe. I don't know what they are.
Stop using words that you don't know the meaning of.
Then I would never speak, Georgios. I'd never say a sentence.
Again, no drawback.
Carry on.
Right. So, I think a lot of it has to do with the game we are presented with and the genre it places itself in, the way it sort of presents itself. The moment you realize, okay, this is the kind of game I'm playing. And with randomness, Dungeon Quest, I think, is a brilliant example of how randomness just works and makes a game better. And randomness in a game, like extreme randomness in a game like A Feast for Odin, would completely destroy everything you do because it's such a tightly designed game. Things like play elimination, things like take that mechanisms, because I think take that mechanisms are fascinating because they can be very frustrating. I do know that quite a few people just generally avoid games with take that mechanism.
Well, it's interesting. I think these things, if we take sort of the big three, and if you can think of another one, add it to the list. But you got take that, you got player elimination, you got roll and move, right? Right. When people talk about
there's low interaction maybe.
Or maybe low interaction, multiplayer solitaire, which is the.
Yeah, I think we keep going back, but
That's what most people call it, so I think it's fine to use it as a term, right? Regardless of what you think it is, I mean, that's what people call it.
Okay.
Whether they misdefine it or not is by the by. So I guess I'm not going to ask the question because I know the answer.
Oh, excellent.
But there are people who think that these aspects of games are intrinsically wrong. That whenever they are applied, because of their inherent wrongness, they can't be right. You introduce that to a game, it'll devalue the game because take that is always bad. But what you're saying is what I completely agree with you, is the game needs to set up the expectation. Right. Then it can leverage the mechanic well.
Exactly.
And so I'm thinking of, and I always use this, there are two games I think that leverage take that brilliantly. Mm-hmm. And they are great fun, and they never have that sense of unjustness. They just have that sense of, all right, did you? All right, then I will. And that's Cutthroat Caverns. Mm-hmm. And that game just is predicated on take that. It's a take that game. And a game that is sometimes not thought of as a take that game, but it absolutely is. I mean, it's basically someone plays a card and then you try and counter it. And that's Blood Bowl Team Manager.
Okay.
And I think Blood Bowl Team Manager is a wonderful game, but it is at its core a take that game. And there is something about, I guess it's the lack of finality. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You need to be offered a path out, right?
Exactly.
But if someone does this to you, you have options to be able to say, oh no, but if I do this, I can one up them. Then take that becomes just this glorious back and forth wrestling match that is a whole lot of fun.
I think with take that, a lot of it, well, other than of course, having to include Robbie Williams, these take that mechanisms work because, like you said, there's the setback, but it's not so bad that it becomes debilitating. This is ultimately the biggest issue I find with take that mechanism, both personally and the groups I play with. The idea of you building up something over 4 or 5 rounds and then with a flip of a card, it all gets destroyed, really annoys people. I think one game that does this the first time you play it and then you never do the same mistake again is Dominaria, which was the Tempest line from AEG, which appears to have been abandoned by Absolutely. Now. Whenever I played this game, there's at least one player at the table who still falls back into these old area control strategies where they build up the base, they expand, and then they get screwed over by that last card. And they get so mad. And it's an example of once you realize how you're supposed to play, you realize, right, I'm building up to my 7th card. I'm not building my base right now. I'm not spreading out, even though you can try it. It's very, very risky play because the 7th card can really screw you over. So this is, I think, a really nice example of how take that can work if you as a player play to its strength, and how it can really, really frustrate you if you're caught unguarded, especially with take that mechanisms, more so than with, say, play elimination. That take that mechanisms need to work within the group dynamics. You need to have a group that, like interpersonally knows or at least interacts in a way that does not double as a way to exclude, to feel like exclusion. Well, because I think this is one of the most difficult parts, I think, of take that mechanisms, that if you're not careful, they feel like you're actively excluding a player from the fun.
I'm not sure I agree with you entirely. I don't think you're wrong. I'm just not sure I agree with you. In that's a very semantic distinction, but I'm a big believer in the responsibility of the designer and the designer designing a game to legislate for a very narrow sort of band of experience.
Okay.
We were talking about this earlier, and games that can either be dreadful or amazing strike me as games that aren't very well designed.
Okay.
And it goes back to this notion. Now, there are some people who will never take that type of attack well. They will always take that badly. But that's not the game. And that is simply to do with faults that they have.
Well, there's something else
going on in their lives, right?
Well, I don't want to push it on the individual, but yeah, generally I agree. It's not game related.
If you play a card on someone and they go, oh, I'm going to rip your testicles off, and they start crying and punching the table and sticking fingers into their own eyes, it ain't what you just did to them. There's something wrong.
But did that happen very often?
I mean, I do it literally every time.
Yes, but honestly,
other than me, no.
I mean, I have seen people get upset and insulted. Yes,
I've seen people storm out of rooms.
I know. I've experienced these kind of situations as well. But I do think that, again, the point I love making whenever the opportunity presents itself is that this is as much an individual problem as it is a group problem.
Well, the thing is, and the point I wanted to make, just get back to what I wanted to say, is that, and the two examples I use for Take That, Cutthroat Caverns, Blood Bowl Team Manager, I think they're games that very much legislate for Take That to be used. Mm-hmm. There's something, the way they introduce that idea minimizes your chances of being pissed off. Right? Because the game lays it all out and it explains to you, this is the nature of the game and it's recoverable. If someone plays this card on you, you can look in the hand of cards you've got and you can think, I can pick on this other guy or the guy who just hit me, and I'm able to recover all of that stuff. Right. And so in most, I mean, of course, the word average is a very dangerous word to use, but I think in most sort of average game groups with people who aren't massively emotionally sensitive, people who, have a real aversion to anything that is conflicting, great Take That games have baked into them crowd control, if you want to put it in that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you
give the influence of the group too much credit. I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is, I was thinking that is I think I find it always too easy and occasionally glib to blame the guy or the person who's having a hard time. I agree with you. It's not that they're completely, without fault. It's not that they're completely, they're not in any way responsible for what's happening or how they react to it. But I do feel that there are ways to mitigate awkward or very, very confrontational situations in a Take That game if the group is actually helping to make things work. I think a certain responsibility lies within the group, within the player. I just
don't see how these responsibilities that lie within the group differ. Maybe you're not saying this.
Yeah.
But what it sounds to me like you're saying is there is a specific sort of unwritten game playing etiquette that sitting around a table playing these sort of games. I don't see how that differs from just normal human interaction sitting around a table in a pub. That sort of basic respect. I don't see how it differs at all.
Well, no, the principles do not differ, but the application does.
Explain.
Because yes, generally, the things you would do in a pub, like be inclusive, look people in the eye when you talk to them, sort of signal to them that when you are sort of making jokes on their behalf, it's done in a friendly spirit. It's not done in a way to sort of really, really show them how much you don't like them. This sense of irony needs to be present, because if it's not, people will start getting into fights in a pub.
Right.
And I think
people do start to get into fights.
For reasons like this, even though they're ostensibly friends. I think the same is true. The same principles apply in board games. It's just, I do think you need to take sort of into account how you, let's say, communicate social dynamics as you play the game. Because a lot of it has to do with how you make your move, which moves you make, how you pick how do you, a lot of it has to...
But I don't see the difference. I mean, it seems to me what anecdotes you tell, what jokes you make about which person at the table,
sure,
who's you sit next to, who you josh around with. It's all the same thing. I don't think the way you act between people in a group, whether there's a game in the middle of the table or sitting around a table just having drinks, is, for any intents and purposes, different, is what I'm trying to say. Those tools that you use to have a cohesive group is exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
I think.
I don't think we're that far apart in our opinions. I'm just trying to point out that...
Well, it's like that time when we were sat around the table and then you were going fatty, fatty, Benz, 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 fatty, fatty, Benz, 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 you fat, 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 fat. I mean, it was a good 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I felt really included.
I kept saying your name.
I was like,
I kept saying,
he's noticed me, I thought.
Basically. No, but, the point I'm trying to make is this, that, in a pub, you're just using conversation. I mean, body language plays a role, but not much. The way you hold your glass doesn't really play into it. The way you sip from your glass doesn't play into it. But these small moments play into it when you play a game. Right. The way whose card, how you sort of
who you do narrate. Your action to,
exactly how you narrate it. I remember one moment, one game where we played one of the first games I've played of Game of Thrones. I was playing next to the friend of mine. We're in an alliance, and she basically close to the end, she was about to win. She basically turned to me and, with no sense of irony, she said, "I'm very sorry. I don't feel good about this, but I'm going to have to do this." And then basically she attacked me, even though we had a very strong going alliance. Basically I think that won her the game.
And it ameliorated you, did it?
Yes, but I think it wasn't so much that, she talked to me, but it was more the sense that, that moment I realized when she made the effort to actually apologize for what she was about to do. When I realized that she actually thought about the consequences of her action instead of just assuming, well, the rules allow me to do this, therefore go fuck yourself, I'm going to win now. That moment where I realized somebody made the effort in how they related to other players in the game, even though the game didn't tell them to. This is the moment I realized there's something going on here.
I mean, I'm going to move off this.
Yes.
Because I think we've been distracted, but I don't think that sort of general social consideration is a skill that is specifically for games. I think she would have been like that.
Oh yes,
I agree. She would have been conciliatory in another situation.
Yes.
And the dickhead who goes, "That joke wasn't funny. Why'd you tell that joke for? You look like a real bloody idiot now you told that joke. People are politely laughing at you now," is the kind of bloke who would still be the twat and poke you in the face when he attacks you in Game of Thrones and breaks your alliance, right?
Basically, yeah. I think the only difference is that, in board games, we seem to make this distinction between how we interact socially and how we interact in the game. And I don't think that distinction is true.
And that is also what I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want the last few minutes, I want you to try and defend something to me.
Go on.
You're a thoughtful chap.
I'm a defender.
I mean, you're sitting there now. You can't see this. I can speak. I can do the speaking. You can't see this, but Georgios is sitting there now with his hand on his chin in a very thoughtful pose. He's very Rodin at the moment. And I want you to defend player elimination to me because I kind of don't... It seems to me like, take That's Fine, Roll and Move, Formula D is the great example of that. Colosseum is also an example of that, in that doesn't seem intrinsically bad in and of itself. When it's used cleverly, it's wonderful. Player elimination seems difficult to me in a game that is longer than 5 minutes. Can you defend it to me?
Yes, I can actually. One caveat though, I think player elimination has long been used very badly and misused, much like Roll and Move. I think the most egregious example of this is Monopoly,
of course,
which is one of the worst games as far as player elimination goes, and because it's predicated on grinding down the entire game until there's only one person standing. And this is a concept, unless the game lasts 5 minutes, I agree with you, it's just bad. Right. There's no defending that. But player elimination does have its purposes. And the example that I keep bringing up because it was so apparent to me was Bang the card game and Samurai Swords, which was the same system, but removing the player elimination. I've played both. I quite like Bang, and I know I'm the minority in that, but I was bored to tears with Samurai Swords and that's actually when I realized that even player elimination has its place, because player elimination introduces a tangible risk within the game. It's a risk that is gone and is instead replaced by you vying for victory points, which if they're too easy to get, they're not that interesting.
Now, you're going to have to remind me, because I played Bang once,
and
it was so traumatic. I've repressed that memory, and someday when I'm in the old folks' home, I'm just going to be sitting there going, no, we're not still playing Bang. Is player elimination inevitable in Bang?
Yes.
Because the problem I have, so if player elimination is a possibility, then what you say makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you really fuck up, you're out of the game and tough. And when it's not just, because I think in that case, player elimination rather than de facto elimination, where you just don't have a bloody chance and you have to sit there for 4 hours just playing the game, that's much better.
Oh, actually, really? Go on.
No, but I mean, if there are some games, right, people tell me Age of Steam is like this. If you fuck up on the first turn, tough. And then you have to play the rest of the game, but you're de facto eliminated because there's literally nothing you can do.
Yeah.
That is terrible.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the possibility of elimination is fine. Inevitable player elimination, I can't conceptually see how that can ever be a good thing.
I think, again, Bang is a good, but it's not a great example of this. It's a good example because of the contrast to Samurai Swords, because the player elimination sort of gives you a reason as to why to be cagey, as to not draw attention to yourself. In order to win, you try to sort of help the people you want to help and sort of damage the people you want to damage, or at least build up your hand in a way that you can at least strike a decisive blow against the opposing team and then move on from there. The fact that if you tip your hand too early, everybody's going to turn their guns on you and they will kick you out. This is the risk that you're dealing. This is the tension that's coming. And I think where even Bang sort of is weakened is that I think the best way of player elimination is, even if it is inevitable, it should be close to the end. It should either be the end of the game, or then it shouldn't last too long.
The Mexican standoff, right?
Yeah, or basically a game like the Daybreak expansion for Battlestar Galactica introduces a player elimination mechanic. I think in the second to last jump. Basically, you have these jumps, they take up to 3-4 turns or something, and the very last jump before the game is properly over, up to 2 players get eliminated. And this introduces this unbearable tension because you are quite literally, scared. You're not excessively scared, but you do worry, will I get eliminated? Will I actually be kicked off the game because I went too far, because I didn't do what I should have done? And this kind of tension, this kind of gnawing fear at the back of your head, it can add to the experience.
This is why if the DM never kills character, Dungeons & Dragons becomes dull.
Yeah.
You need the fear of paying the ultimate price, right?
Yeah.
But I guess with player elimination, this is a tool that needs to be deployed in the most meticulously thought out way.
Right. Again, like roll and move. Yeah.
Right, because it needs to be placed at exactly the right spot. And the game you also need to get the players invested enough in the conclusion that even if they don't participate in the conclusion, they want to see how it ends, right?
I think Bang kind of cheats its way out of it by splitting it into 2 teams that can win posthumously. Like the Outlaws can win even if almost all of them are dead. As long as one guy is still standing when the sheriff gets killed, the Outlaws win. And the same is true with the deputies. The deputies can sort of be the human shield for the sheriff. They still win if the sheriff survives.
But I never feel like I've won if I'm dead.
Yeah, I think this kind of has to do with how the game develops, because in Battlestar Galactica, you're quickly you're forced to work together. Everything you do, everything you achieve, you only achieve because you participated, because you contributed to it. With Bang, this kind of investment can happen, but it's not baked into the rules.
Well, I'm going to contradict myself, of course, with something like Battlestar Galactica. If you die, the noble sacrifice is an archetype. It's always very satisfying to do, right? As a player.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that never occurred to me. Yeah. I'm going to have to try that when I play Daybreak. If I end up, realizing, all right, I'm not winning this, I'll do as much as I can before I go out in a blaze of glory. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right then, Georgios. Well, I'm going to go now.
Oh, now?
Now?
Well,
what did you expect me to do?
I don't know. Stay?
I can't stay.
Oh.
The things you do to me in the groin, Georgios, I'll pop if I don't go and have a wanko majanko now.
I find the sexual undercurrent very, it seems to be a new addition to the show. I'm not sure I like it.
I love it. Spielpro.com. It's that place you can go to get all of those things that you can pimp your game with, that you can make your game not only look fantastic, but absolutely unique. And that's why we're here to talk about Spielpro.com. And it's really not just me sat in a room splicing pre-recorded things that Georgios has said, is it, Georgios?
Why, it's Spielpro.com.
That's right, absolutely. So in Spielpro.com you can get a variety of things to pimp your game. You can buy barrels, you can buy Catan streets, you can buy different components that you could paint yourself or that you could use as they are that will elevate the experience. Isn't that right, Georgios?
It's Spielpro.com.
Again, you speak sense. So go to Spielpro.com, use the coupon code INFOPERFECTED, get a hefty discount. And we don't take ourselves too seriously, and Spielpro.com don't take themselves too seriously either, do they, Georgios?
Seriously, Spielpro.com.
Spielpro.com. Good evening, sir. Take a comfortable seat, slide into a complimentary pair of slippers, and enjoy our hospitality. Welcome to the Guild. Ooh, Georgios.
Yeah.
Feel that leather?
Yes.
No, feel it. Literally
I know what it feels like. This is a big issue. It's the first time we're recording and I'm not wearing my sock. I'm wearing proper clothes. I feel very vulnerable.
We have to dress up, Georgios.
I had a sock.
I mean, the other guild was very nice, but this is a bloody class.
They really liked me with the sock there.
They got prints.
I felt included.
They got prints.
Which one?
Of horses on the walls.
Not even good ones.
They got those crystal cup decantery thingies. Janine told me that she was scared in case she dropped a glass and they charged her 50 quid for it. I said they're not worth 50 quid.
Wait, was she scared that they would pay her for the glass or for having to bend over to pick it up?
What are you trying to say, Georgios?
I'm trying to say they're all perverts.
That's my lady love.
Yes, and I'm saying the men here are all perverts.
She is not a lady who would take a £50 note in her stocking girdle to allow old men to ogle at her backside.
Fair enough.
Unfortunately. Because I could really do with some cashy-washy right now, Georgios. I even suggested it to her, if I'm honest, and she went to slap me in the face.
She should have, yeah.
And then just said, "It won't achieve anything," and stormed out of the room.
I'm still amazed at why she puts up with your suggestions.
It's love, Georgios. I am a very magnetic personality.
So what you're basically saying is love is indeed a sickness.
I mean, if it's with me, it's kind of like one of those debilitating ones that makes you vacillate between depression, anger, and suicidal nanosity.
What's nanosity? Is it where you go, no?
It's the suffix to suicidal when you make it into a verb noun.
A verb noun.
It's a special grammatical thing that you don't know about, Georgios.
Yes, because it's not my first language.
Exactly.
You're right. Right.
Only when you're born in England, they send you a fax.
They still use faxes in England.
Because it's secret, because no one uses fax.
Obviously, that's
get the
true.
Fax, so they teach you a couple of the things.
It's only the English and the Friedrich Merz Verlag who does Essenspiel. Yeah.
Exactly. We're like Oscar Matzerats, the English.
Oh yeah, who's he?
He's a bloke from the Tin Drum who was fully cognizant right from the minute he woke up and can remember everything right from his birth. It's all British people are like, Georgios. You get the facts and they just say, memorise this. It's made of dried mammary milk, and after you've memorised it, get it eaten, baby. But they don't have that tone, baby. Like
Because it sounds so American.
Well, the Big Bopper. It's just they're calling you baby because that's what you are.
No.
That's true.
Factually true then.
That all I just said there?
Yes.
Facts, Georgios.
Yes.
And not hashtag alternative facts, Georgios.
Are you sure? Go on.
Anyway, so yeah. So what was the question last time, Georgios?
The question was, should we evangelize the hobby, and if so, what aspects should we highlight?
All right, well, let's get down to it. What do the beautiful people who write on our guild with their intelligent fingered pens say, Georgios?
Wait, intelligent fingered pens? I'm trying to praise this phrase. Are we talking about pens with intelligent fingers? Are the pens fingered intelligently?
The keyboard,
Yes.
they're fingered pens. Because they do what a pen does with the touch of a finger. That's what we call them. It's just another one of those things. On the facts, Georgios. It's on the facts.
Fingered pens. Is this some sort of porn genre involving the vice president that I don't know about?
Not everything is porn, Georgios. Some of it is a secret facts you get when you're a British baby.
That's true. That is true. Secret facts. Hashtag secret facts.
yeah. X though.
If you have to spell it out, it's not funny anymore.
If you're going to tweet that, if you're going to tweet it, it's an X at the end, not a CTS. That's a conflict table of surprises in war games. On topic.
I'm going to kill you. You are aware of that, right?
I'm on topic, baby. I'm never off topic, lady.
The strange thing is you're going to edit this, and it will probably make the episode, and it's going to be such a great meandering tangent. It's like going people, skipping. Nope, they're still bullshitting, skipping.
I'm sorry, meandering tangent and great, Georgios? That's a tautology.
Brian Girding says, I think that now, more than ever, this is exactly what we need. We need a social hobby to try and pull people together. I'm not entirely disagreeing here. Well, maybe not the emphasis of more than ever, but I do think board games are a social hobby, and I do think that board games compared to other games, and there's a very, very interesting thread on our guild comparing board gamers to video gamers, but I think board games have the strength of creating social spaces, small social spaces, small groups that allows people to get to know each other.
Well,
they get to spend time with each other.
I mean, Brian's essentially asserting that board games can save the world, and while I think that's overly...
No, I think on that point he's completely right.
While I think it's overly dramatic, I mean, I think certainly we could do with more people sitting round tables engaging in something that isn't overtly antagonistic, right?
We are talking about board games, right?
Well, if you come to my board game club, Georgios, it's just good old people having a good old time. You know what I mean? He's right. I mean,
he's right.
As a broader principle.
As a broader principle, yes. This is much more, much, for lack of a better term, real than the virtual realities of video games.
Right, and there's a worry that, I mean, board games seems to me that, and video games too, certainly, cross all sorts of beliefs and political spectra, right? I mean, there are right-wing people who play board games, left-wing people who play, conservative people, liberal people who play board games.
I refuse to accept the conservatives in the board game hobby, but that's just my personal hang-up.
But, you know, and the thing is, video games are kind of tailored, because of the nature of them, where you physically play them, then they're in their very nature prone to ghettoization. Whereas board games, there is a worry that they will become ghettoized too, that you'll have your LGBT board game club and your liberal board game club and your conservative board game club. And the hope is, I think, what Brian's saying, and I think he's right, is that people of all political sheens and opinions, and I think we can discount people on the extreme edges. I think that's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Just sit around together and maybe realise, because our world, we've started to demonise people whose opinions differ from us only in the slightest ways. You know, we see small government people, I mean, certainly I do, and I'm prone to this idea that you're trying to kill us. You're selfish, self-interested people who are trying to kill us. Now, maybe they have a point. It may be a point that I never agree with, but maybe they do have a point. And maybe they're not demons. And sitting around a table and having a nice, neutral environment that isn't ghettoized, that welcomes everybody, is something we should aspire to, right?
2 points. One, board game wise, I think the idea of coming together, spending time with people and not as opponents is a good thing, and it helps us sort of realize, maybe, and I'm going to sound over dramatic here, to some extent, some tiny extent, realize this shared humanity we have.
Right.
When we see another person, when we see their reactions, when we can empathize with them, or even when we can sort of struggle with them, fight them in a very, let's say, playful and joyful manner. The other point, to your more general social point, is that I don't see that way. I think
What don't you see? You don't think people who disagree with you politically?
No.
You think they're monsters? Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is we are past the point where sitting down, talking with each other is the solution to everything.
Well, I think
that's just my mood right now.
Right, but it's not right, and I think people who I don't have a religious faith, and I have a lot of issues with the doctrines that religious faith have. Mm-hmm. I think some of them are downright mean. I'm not going to get into it here because this isn't a religious podcast, but that doesn't stop me sitting down with someone of a religious faith.
Oh yeah.
I think some things within certain political beliefs are downright mean, and as I said, I think you can discount the people on the extreme edge. I think the people on the extreme edge aren't rational, and I think we can discount the irrational people. But there are so many people within that spectrum. There are so many people within that spectrum who I may fundamentally disagree with, but that doesn't make them monsters. It doesn't make them non-people.
I think the only difference I would make is that, and then I think we should recut this tangent of...
It's not a tangent, Brian. Brian
brought it up, yeah.
Blame Brian.
Blame Brian. Hashtag blame Brian. I think the point that I'm not so sure of anymore is that the fringes on certain sides are that small anymore. I think the fringes have gone larger, and that personally it terrifies me.
I think the voices are louder. I honestly, just finally to put an end to it, I just think the voices are louder, and I think we're guilty of taking them far too seriously. Okay, Dave Moser. Dave Moser, 22. Do you think that's his age or the number of girlfriends he has?
I think he's clone number 22.
Oh, right, so he's the 22nd Dave Moser to be tipped out the tube.
Yeah, decanted, yeah.
Welcome, Dave.
Welcome, Dave, 22. He doesn't evangelize as a board gamer, which is interesting. Why do you think that is? So, Dave, 22, does not evangelize, and I do wonder why that might be. As he says, he prefers the catching flies with honey approach by emphasizing the interesting bits, I guess.
I have been hurt so many times in my life, Georgios, with this...
Forks. No.
I mean, yes, also, and door frames, yeah. and just general buffoonery. But is it narcissism? Probably. But I have this just assumption that if I find value in something, and deep, profound value, it seems inconceivable to me that other people won't. I remember when I was 14 and I got into the Dead Kennedys, and I thought they were the fucking greatest thing that had ever lived. I mean, really, they spoke to me, and I thought, my God, I've discovered this amazing thing. I need to show everybody, and every time we got into a car with friends and stuff, so can we play my Dead Kennedys tape? And some people, it's all right. Most people didn't like it. And when I started getting into board games, I had exactly the same thing. Right. My non-gamer friends, I desperately tried to bring them in, and it didn't work. And the reason I don't evangelize is I've been hurt by it so many times that I just don't bother now.
Yeah, I don't know if I used to think I evangelize a lot, and then I realized a few times that I brought it up with my colleagues at work. They always seem quite keen, like, oh yeah, we should totally do this, until you start to
actually fix a plan.
Fix a plan there. Oh no, I can't do that. I need to do this. Oh no, I can't do that. I need to do this. Oh no, not this lunch break. I need to do this. And the strange thing is, when I did actually trap one of them, not intentionally, just happened that way, she ended up actually going, these are really fun. We should do this more often. And that enthusiasm was gone 2 days later. So I'm sort of written them off. But I realized that I'm kind of in the same boat as you, in the sense that if I see something of value, of something I'm excited about, I do believe that others can see value and be excited about it as well. I don't assume that they will. I think I've grown out of that phase as well.
Right.
But I realize, and part of the reason why I want to do podcasts and I do these things at all is that, and the way I do them as I do them, is because I do feel passionate about board games. I do feel passionate about all these things. And I think this interest, this enthusiasm, this joy of dealing with this stuff is transported by the way we talk about board games.
Absolutely.
I think, not to toot our own horn, but I do think...
Well, you can't reach, can you?
Well, I can actually, which is why I'm so calm all the time.
I wondered about that.
There you go.
And why you always look like you've got a milk moustache.
No, that's actually milk, unfortunately. It's sad. I can't get it out. Anyway,
it's very adhesive to the Greek hair, I think.
It is. I do think that through some conceptual alchemy, interest, enthusiasm, investment is something that people recognize and they do enjoy and they do appreciate, even if they're not as deep into the topic as the people talking, or even if they are deeper in the topic than the people talking, they enjoy it. It's why I enjoy so much board game media, even if there are other things I don't like about it. The enthusiasm is, if not infectious, uplifting.
I mean, the people I evangelize to, if I ever do, are not the people who don't play games.
Right.
They're the people who've played games for 3 or 4 months and you see that sparkle in their eyes when you finish a game. And you go, right, they're the people, because they've got, the hooks are in them, you see. Yeah. And they're the people I can speak to and go, you should try this and this and this. We've tried these genre of games and this genre of games. And then you can live vicariously through their discoveries. But the complete tabula rasa, the blank slates, I'm done.
Yeah, no, I think I would do that. I think my expectations are far lower now. I think I'll still suggest, I keep suggesting when people go, I don't know what to do, I'm so bored, I don't like movies, I don't like books, I don't know what to do, I don't want to get drunk. I keep suggesting board games. And there's still this hurdle in a lot of people's heads that board games are either nerdy, geeky, or something for kids. And I don't mind the nerdy and geeky, because if you're that obsessed about how you come across to people, you might just be too immature to play a board game. But it's this idea of that they're either too complicated or not for them. That really annoys me.
Well, it's not seemly for an adult to do, right? And that's just plain wrong, because it's seemly to do basically whatever you fucking want.
Yes.
I mean, within reason, obviously. But,
yeah.
If you consider that great, I mean, and it's always that distinction, isn't it? Now, I'm a football fan. And I love football, and I try and watch football every weekend, and I have a team that I'm very deeply invested in.
Right.
But often, and I listen to a lot of football podcasts, and you hear these guys who have this encyclopedic knowledge. You can tell you the score and the scorers from a game in 1974.
Right.
And they are held up in some sort of great esteem, yet if you do this, you're held up as this sort of social misfit. And it seems to me that there's very little difference there, except that the one area is considered cool and socially acceptable and the other one isn't. The operating system that operates within it is no different. And I've just decided, well, fuck that. I like both of them and I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't try not to memorize too much about board games. It seems weird. I just end up with these weird, odd connections. It's like how I can tell a bunch of movies actors have played in. It annoys me because I feel like I don't really care enough about that actor. I don't really care enough about that movie. But if somebody were to ask me, I can actually run down these details, and it annoys me because I'd rather fill my head with more useful stuff. But I never feel that way about board games.
Would you like to fill your head with the knowledge of what I look like doing a sensual dance of the 7 veils?
So, Isaac Shalev answers, and I think we've spoken to Isaac before, and he's posted before, so this is great. He's a returning listener.
Friend of the show, even.
Excellent. He suggests Can't this simply be normal? People have hobbies. Give them half a chance and they'll tell you about them and why they enjoy them. And if they can read social cues, they can figure out when to shut up about them and when to invite people to join them. See, I was very bad at those things. True for sailors, true for golfers, true for gamers. Except we have an overrepresentation of folks who can't read social cues in a hobby. I think he makes three very interesting points. The first one, can't this simply be normal? Which I think goes along with what you've been just saying. It shouldn't be that unusual to be excited about a hobby you love.
Right.
And you should be free to talk about it because, hey, last weekend I played a lot of games. It was great fun. You don't really need to go into detail how you use this great card combo in Dominion to people who've never played a board game. But other than that, it's totally normal. And you should be able to, social cues should tell you when to stop talking about yourself and start listening to other people. One thing I noticed, this over-representation of folks who can't read social cues. Two things come to mind. First, I don't disagree with him. I don't either.
I see it writ large every week when I go to Board Game Club.
But it does sort of, this question comes up in my head. Are we a bit too comfortable with geek bashing? And assuming bashing our own hobby.
No, I mean I don't see that. I mean I can see.
I mean it's whether we're bashing is independent of whether it's true or not.
Self-reflection and self-mockery is always a sign of affection, right? And so when you feel that you're intimate enough within a hobby or within a genre, within football, within opera, whatever, there is a natural inclination to make jokes about the people who are into it. It's affectionate. Of course, it can go over the top, as everything can. And I don't see it as another great sort of big piece of prejudice that we geek bashing. I mean, and in my experience, so I was playing last week. I was at Game Club, and there's a guy who's really nice, and he's a really nice guy. He's a little bit. He doesn't know how to temper his enthusiasm, I guess is the best way to describe it. Okay, and we're playing. I bought Jolly Roger last week, the trick-taking game. No, Skull King, the trick-taking game,
all right,
which is the best game in the world, by the way. And we were playing it. And some guy who was sat next to him played a card, and it was a funny thing. And this guy clapped him really hard on the shoulder. And this guy turned around to him and said, "Can you not touch me, please?" That reaction was a bit strong, but the clapping him on the shoulder was a bit strong too. And I see those little incidents of just an inability to read a situation all the time, much, much more when we're playing games than I do with my other social groups. Right. I mean, I see them with my other social groups, but much, much more.
Oh, yeah, but...
And I don't think to point it out is bashing geeks, and I don't think to make affectionate jokes about it is bashing geeks either.
I think the point that I'm a bit worried about, and word might even be too strong a word, but it's just an observation I've made, and I thought, that's interesting. It is quite obviously one of the flaws people like to bring up when they talk about nerds or geeks, their inability to read social cues or not be socially awkward. Now, regardless of whether we see it as well, because I agree with you, in many board game situations, I feel the same way. There's at least one, maybe more people who are really awkward behaving, like interacting with other people, unless they can focus on the game. But sort of us making a joke about this kind of weakness, let's call it that, around people who are maybe not as affectionate, who feel like their prejudices are affirmed or reaffirmed because even people within the hobby are pointing it out. Might be damaging.
It is not my job. And if we're talking about evangelization here, it is not my job to confirm or deconfirm other people's prejudices.
No.
It is their job to deconfirm them or confirm them themselves. Therefore, me having a normal interaction with my social circle that everyone else does is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to constrict my behaviour for fear that someone might think I'm a nerd. But my opera singer friends, I have a lot of opera singer friends, and they make jokes all the time about divas and stressing and about sopranos having sex with all the tenors. And believe me, there is a sect within opera singing. Sopranos are all sluts and tenors are all sluts, right? And they make jokes. They make jokes about this. They're screwing each other all the time. Right. Of course, it's not a real representation, but it's those kind of jokes are membership cards into the social circle. And frankly, I don't give a fucking toss if someone who's not involved in it takes that to confirm their prejudices. Their prejudices are their prejudices.
But see, to me, it seems that the comparison to geeks talking about how they're socially inept, making jokes about that. If we look at football, it would be, football fans are alcoholics and, uneducated lower class people, and I don't think that's a fair representation as well. But football fans have a different standing in society.
But it's not about a fair representation, is it? It's about an affectionate ribbing of people you like. That's what it is. And to remove humour from these situations,
I'm not talking about removing humour at all.
It's not it's not a dangerous precedent. I don't think it's dangerous, and I don't think it ghettoises us as a group, because frankly we're ghettoised as a group anyway, and we choose to be so. I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's a sign of membership in a clan. And if people start to tell me that those things, because I have a very reasonably an adult attuned sense of when I'm being a fucking idiot and when I'm not. I know sometimes I go overboard, and I generally tend to apologise when that happens. But I will not have people asserting that I have intentions other than I don't, and I will not be the representative of my group, because frankly that's not my job.
Yeah, but I think on the one hand, I don't think gamers choose to ghettoize themselves, because the responses seem to suggest that's not the case.
Well, you choose to go to a particular building on a particular day and do a particular thing.
Yes, but that's not ghettoization. I think the responses in the thread suggest that promoting a hobby, treating it as a healthy part of what we do in our free time, is what at least our listeners, or those who responded at least, want. I think that's the opposite of choosing to be ghettoized.
But you wouldn't deny that there is also a pleasure in that sort of being part of something that not everyone's part of, and having some sort of joy out of something that some people just don't understand. There is an intrinsic joy in that, absolutely. I know something you don't know, and that's right.
I don't know.
Maybe not for you, but
I personally, I can't speak for anyone but myself. I haven't had this experience yet. I haven't met people where I thought, yeah, he's just, if you really stretch things, maybe, and really maybe, if you really stretch it, the idea of, going to some place like Essen and finding a game that is really, really fun, really enjoyable, and telling other people about it, maybe that kind of fits. But this is very internal. This is not about, I play board games and they're so much fun, which you don't know. That never occurred to me, no.
We'll expand on this
later
on in a topic, because I think this is really a valuable thing to talk about. This whole sort of the milieu of the board game arena. Yeah,
but let me just sum up my thought as well. The idea that I'm not saying we shouldn't make these jokes. Again, like I said before, it was the thought that crossed my mind, and I wondered, to what extent are we sort of... Now, I can't make this comparison, I might not, at least not on the show, but to what extent are we just, instead of standing up for... As you alluded to in the question, instead of standing up for the strengths of a hobby, the fact that we sit down to be with people, to empathize with people, to share experience with people, making jokes about that, making jokes about the fact that I think the IT show did quite a funny joke about board game media, where they get excited in a very, very dull way about a game that looks very, very, very dull. That is funny. That is affectionate ribbing. That is taking the piss out of something you love.
Right.
And I agree with you, this is great. But taking the piss out of a weakness that people are actually using as a reason to shun gamers, that seems tricky to me.
It doesn't seem at all tricky to me, because, firstly, I'm not mocking the disabled, I'm not being ableist. Secondly, as I said before, it's not my job to represent this hobby. I have no desire to represent this hobby. The people I speak to on this, I don't have the same idea as the Dice Tower has.
Right.
I don't see this podcast as an organ to introducing people to board games. No. I see this podcast as an organ for people within the hobby to speak to each other. Therefore, quite frankly, if I reinforce your prejudices or I subvert your prejudices, I don't really care, because that's not my consideration. Anyway, so, usually, Georgios, I I get off about now because...
Yes, because we're done.
Well, I have attention and release practice, but they said they're going on hiatus.
All right.
I've seen some posters around town that they've got a gig tomorrow. They tell me it was a misprint.
I'm sure it was.
Old posters.
Old posters, yeah.
So I'm going to settle into this comfy leatherman armchair, Georgios.
Right. Amongst all these perverts here.
I consider them as...
Friends.
Denizens.
No, fair enough.
It's not even a word I know the meaning of, Georgios, but it sounds quite good. And,
it basically means you believe in a man called Dennis.
That's pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah.
And if you'd care to join me, you can have a Menuzo on the rocks, and I'll have a Scotchy Watcho.
You really don't like pronouncing words, do you?
Say goodnight, Georgios.
No, I'm going to leave. There are too many perverts here. I'm going back to the old guild.
It's crass, unsophisticated, and emotionally manipulative.
It's this week's review.
El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. De pie cantar que vamos a triunfar.
Hola, compañeros. It's an exciting time to be alive in Barcelona right now. People is coming from all over Catalonia to make new and better life here. And it's in our hand to become the most powerful and influential family of all of Barcelona's aristocracy. All it takes is to build houses. See, sometimes you want to build beautiful, luxurious casa aristocratica. But then, what about the simple folk, the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free? They will only have one place to go, Raval. But when Raval is overrun, there is only unrest, rebellion, and eventually anarchy. And only the true friends of the people will be the victorious. You must make choice muy difícil. Provide a home for the immigrants coming and become hero of the people. Expand Barcelona into vibrant and beautiful ciudad, but gain no favor from the crown. Or build the homes only for the rich and the powerful, and hope the masses will not realize that all it takes to find justice is for them to rise up and depose of property owners grasping at power. It is no accident that this is Barcelona, la Rosa del Fuego.
Yeah. Skip to the end.
It's the one sentence review.
Barcelona is a game that feels like the Sagrada Familia, a beautiful folly full of great ideas, but ultimately unfinished.
Art in board games is not the same as art off board games, and Barcelona cuts corners in playability to uphold the integrity of its artistic purpose, keeping the game from fully shining.
Georgios? Ooh, what's that in the corner of the room?
I don't know, but it's eating peanuts with its nose.
So,
Yes, like so.
the elephant had some terrible trouble getting in this week, Georgios.
He was very, very tall.
And also his passport was from the wrong country,
Yeah, probably.
so it was kind of hard. He got in eventually.
He did speak Spanish.
But, you know, those border guards, they use quite big rubber gloves to do that search, Georgios.
I was quite surprised that they were fighting over the right to do that. I think there's something wrong with those
Well, they're
people.
all people who are aspiring vets. That's true about the people at airports. They're all aspiring vets, Georgios.
I think they are also perverts.
So the elephant in the room in this game, I guess, is this is a game that is trying to, in some ways, elucidate the immigrant experience.
Yeah. Well, it incorporates at least this situation and how you deal with people coming to your city.
I guess I'm wrong, actually. I think what it does is asks you to model the problem of how you accommodate people.
Yeah.
And what is your social obligation when you're the people who are planning a city
Right.
for those people that are incoming, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think there's the migrant, immigrant, I'm not quite sure, rule there that at the beginning of the turn kind of determines the cost of the buildings you play and how much how much tension, social tension is going to be created by you going for high victory points or...
So essentially what you do on your turn in this game is you lay a tile and you put a building on. Mm-hmm. Buildings are discerned by number of roofs. They're lovely little wooden pieces. And one roof building, essentially within the game, sort of hosts one family. 4 roofs hosts a large amount of people.
Right.
They're sort of like social housing. So in point scoring, you score more points for the more fine houses, the one-roof houses.
Yeah, the family houses, as opposed to the council houses, that the term?
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas the social housing gives you more reputation, which allows you more sort of flexibility within the game.
Right.
And also fewer people move into homelessness.
Right, yeah.
On your turn, which means you're responsible for less homelessness, so it doesn't damage your reputation. And it's about balancing those two things within the game.
Exactly. I think if you're the kind of listeners who've been with us for a long time, at least if you've listened to our last Essen show, I interviewed one of the designers, Francesco Napitello, about this rules design, and I actually didn't go back to listen to it. But the way I remember it, I'm probably wrong, is that he wanted the players to sort of feel this tension between, on the one hand, trying to score more victory points, but on the other hand, not letting the city fall into ruins because it's overrun by protesting people on the Raval.
And disaffected people. And I was very interested in this because it seemed timely, it seemed poignant. So I wanted to sit down and play this game. And I have to say, I feel that they slightly missed the mark. I don't think intentionally, but something very, very interesting happens with this game. Let's talk. I think what it's trying to achieve is putting you in a situation of tension as to, I don't want to put these people there, but on the other hand, I do want to score victory points later on. But I feel that this tension only really manifests itself if you are invested enough in the history and the setting of the game and the idea of these people being people and not meeples. I was reminded of your excitement about The Grizzled. I remember eventually playing it and going, yeah, that's a good game. It's a decent game, but it didn't have this deep emotional connection. They didn't have this experience of dread. I didn't, or as you put it, this idea of, I don't remember the word. Futility. Oh, futility to some extent, but it didn't resonate with me to the same extent because I don't have this background, this knowledge, this extensive experience with dealing with World War II and the memory of World War I and the memory of World War I. So to me, what I had with The Grizzled was a tightly, quite challenging cooperative game with unusual but very respectful setting. And I feel the same happens with Barcelona. If you're invested in it, if you care about this time of history, if you care about Catalan history, culture, I think you will find a very, very deep connection that will be, I do believe, I assume at least, you will have a stronger connection, a stronger feeling of tension of what's going on, of you basically sending people to live on the street than you would if you're ignorant like me. If this is a game to you, and this is just about scoring points. Well, of course, the thing with The Grizzled, and this is what cinema always seeks to do, is make the individual the analog for everybody.
Right, yeah.
Right? And so the personal gets exploded into the macro, to the political. And inherently, whenever you deal with this thing on a macro level where you're looking at the whole city, it's inevitably going to feel more gamey. It's, when you see, back in these movies in the olden days, and the generals are pushing the horses on the map of the battle, right? Mm-hmm. They are distanced because they're not in there. There's not a face. These are just nameless people. And I guess Francesco is asking you to feel that and understand that, but also overcome that and reward you for doing the right thing, or at least reward you in different ways for doing different things and say you can be selfish, but this will happen. Or you can be magnanimous, but this will happen.
Right, yeah.
And it's clever, but I think you're right. I don't know half as much about Barcelona as I should, and so I miss a lot. And their real desire for historiosity robs that feeling of general connection, right?
Right. I think one strange experience I did have when playing this game, and one that I usually don't have, is that I was the migrants became a nuisance. I realized at some point that I'm thinking of these people that are described in the rulebook as people coming to Barcelona, the hub of civilization at this point, trying to build a life there, full of hopes, full of trying to, be given a chance, an opportunity to build the life there. And me, as a person who gets points out of building buildings, especially if they're just, high value buildings, to me, they felt they were a nuisance. They were like, I don't care about these poor people. I don't care about them. And I don't know. I'm really, really purely hypothetical now. Maybe this was intentional. Maybe it was a happy accident. I don't know. But it did at some point make me stop and go, this is weird how much I dislike them.
Well, it's really interesting. Well, I think there are two interpretations of this. The migrants aren't a pain.
Right.
The ones in the Ravelas are a pain.
Yeah.
The ones that are happily sat in their rooms are fine. It's the guys who are homeless that are a pain.
Yeah.
And what the game asks you to do, actually, is try and limit that as much as possible, firstly.
Okay, yeah.
So sort of baked into the game is this philanthropic urge is sort of built into the game. You want to build buildings to house as many people so fewer go into the homeless thing. But also what's really interesting, and whether this is intentional, lower rates of immigration are preferable, right?
Well, they're preferable in the sense that they will score you more points. Lower rates means if you build a high-class building, you're not sending so many people into the Raval. And
yeah, so basically, just to clarify,
yeah.
You have a rate of migration. It moves from 4 to 5.
4, 5 to 6. I think the last
round
can
can be 6, but the previous round's 4 to 5. And basically, when you build a building, you subtract the migration rate from the number of roofs on that building, and then you put workers in the Ravelas, which is the sort of homeless bit. So if the
I think it's a big marketplace where people meet. Yeah.
So if the migration is 4 and you build a 4 value building, no guys put in there. But if you build a 1, 3 guys goes in there, and there are things that happen in the game that punish you for that.
Yeah, eventually, if it's overrun, if there are too many people lounging about on the Raval, they go to the barricades. They start protesting. They start causing social unrest. Yeah, I think I was very, very interested in this game when it came out in Essen because I found it seemed to me it had political conscience on its mind. At least it wanted to be. Not necessarily be about making a big political statement, but it was very aware that what they were talking about has a political resonance.
And there's no question in my mind either that this is a game that wears its political affiliations on its sleeve.
Right, yeah.
I think this is a game that is made by someone of the left.
Yeah, you are 150% right.
Know him, I don't. But the game.
No,
really
you're right.
That.
I think you're 150% right. It just never occurred to me because it didn't occur to me that you could try to make a game about this in another direction.
Well, absolutely. You could make a game that limits immigration, that seeks to ghettoize people. I mean, the game is very egalitarian in that you can build posh buildings and social housing next to each other.
Right.
You could make a game in which posh buildings are in preferable areas and can only be built in this area, and these areas can only have the social housing and never the twain shall meet. And then you have a mechanic where people from this social housing can only go to the posh areas to work and stuff like that. You could have that.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I was just this moment of self-reflection where I realized it never even occurred to me that somebody could make like a right-wing version of a game like this.
But we've been having a lovely chat, and what we haven't done is answer the question: does it do it?
Actually, when we started recording this session, this bit especially, I thought my answer would be no. And now that we've talked about some of these points, I'm unsure. It got us talking about these things. It got us invested enough to think about these things. It made us go, right. It made me at least go, why am I annoyed? Why is this? Why does it feel uncomfortable to do this? What are these things that are supposed to motivate me? Why do they put me at cross purposes? Why do I want to do this and not that? So maybe I would actually take a step back from a clear no, as I had started off on, and go at least to a point of, I'm not sure it does explicitly what it sets out to do, but it does at the very least, as you say, where its influence on its sleeve. It's very much about, this is obvious. I mean, if you utterly refuse to see anything but numbers and tokens, nobody's going to help you. But if you're aware of a game existing beyond the bits and pieces, it will make you think, it will make you go, right, this is odd. And I think maybe it succeed at something that I'm not quite sure how I would phrase what it is.
For me, I think it's possible to kind of skim over it. I mean, with most board games, that's possible, right?
It worked with Monopoly.
Right. But I think if I were playing this and I didn't know the background, and then the minute someone pointed it out to me, it would seem to me as clear as day.
Right.
Their intentions and what these things are representing. And in that, the more I think about it, and the more I talk to you about this, the more I think it does it well, and not just well, but brilliantly well.
All right.
Very elegantly, very simply, by subtracting two numbers, you condemn some people to poverty. It's very simple. It's very clever. And done very elegantly.
All right.
So, what did you think of my interactive, candid photo montage?
Well, it was certainly an experience.
All right, Georgios.
Yes, Ben.
That was a bit over the top, love.
Yes, I remember somebody somewhere on the internet mentioning that we talk to each other's name. We mention each other's names too often, and they stopped listening to us.
It wasn't using my name. It was just the over enthusiasm. I don't know. I know I'm beautiful, but my God.
Well, I did take acting lessons.
Oh, in between shows.
Yeah, I do.
It shows.
Yeah, no,
you're a lot better now.
I feel like I can sort of convey compassion and sort of sympathy without actually feeling it.
And you're not sitting opposite me and retching now, so they've really
yeah, but that's just the medication.
The gag reflex has really been calmed down. Anyway,
true.
So I think our experiences here are going to be fairly similar. But
it's a dangerous road. It's a dangerous thing to say, but you may be right, you may be wrong. Let's see.
Give us a rundown of the experience of playing the game, and I guess it's separated into two areas: clarification of a lot of stuff, post clarification of a lot of stuff, right?
All right. This we talked about this, whether this would be the elephant in the room or not. So it's basically the second big issue with this game.
Yeah.
I'll be blunt, but hopefully still diplomatic. The rulebook is shite.
It's dreadful. Yes.
It's a lot of things are nice about it. It looks nice. It's written fairly well, but no, it's not written fairly well. The problem is that it's structured in a way that makes it really difficult to figure out what is going on, even though at its core, it's a very easy and elegant game. You have 4 cards in your hands, play them and do what they say. You have a small selection of what kind of building you want to build. You have a few choices where you want to build it, and that's it. And then, you pay certain things, you move them when something happens, and you have a lot of these extra rules added on. They all have a purpose, and I think this is where the rulebook sadly fails. The purpose for a lot of these rules isn't clear, and many games get away with this by sort of tying it very apparently into the setting, sort of how you need to reload a gun, so that's why you draw this card and place it here, or how you need to heal up, that's why you place these tokens over there, and so on. This doesn't really happen with this game. So you have a lot of abstract rules that seem to work together, but you don't have a very apparent setting explanation, and you do not have a gameplay explanation as to why you have these rules and what they do and why you should pay attention to them.
Well, the problem with the rulebook is you slaved to the rulebook, I didn't.
Yes.
This is one of your slave sessions. But it seemed to me that the rulebook wasn't very good at explaining the game and wasn't very good as a reference material either.
Yeah.
You can argue that there are some rulebooks
learning the first game is a bloody nightmare. But when you have
Space Hulk.
Right. But when you have
Death Angel, yeah.
When you have to space, that is the worst ever. But when you have to refer back to it, it's pretty good. This does neither of the things a rulebook should do well. Right?
Yeah.
And that's an issue. But I think harping on the rulebook is one thing. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest issue here is they've valued historical verisimilitude over gameplay, right?
Yes, I think even more so, I think you can see the love and the care that's being put into the artwork, and the artwork is gorgeous.
Absolutely
it really
astonishing.
It's fantastic. Yeah. Just putting the game on the table, playing a few turns, and then if you're playing at some place where there are people passing you by, I guarantee you they will stop and ask you what it is, because it's fantastic looking. It's not even like showy the way that a game like Scythe is very showy about its very, very beautiful art, but it's just unique and vibrant, and it's nice to look at. And there's so many details, and they're clever little details, and there's a lot of women there, and I like looking at women because I'm a pervert. I've said pervert in almost every segment this time.
But they're not, I mean, it's not sexy rebellious birds in bikini.
No,
anarchy.
not at all.
It's just, I mean, the art is beautiful. All of the people are rendered wonderfully. It's very evocative. It's very
unique.
Period.
Yeah.
But the problem is the art is too good and they weren't brutal enough. So there are parts of the board that are huge that serve no purpose. And there are parts of the board that are really important and are tiny because they wanted to have the lovely picture of the people manning the barricades waving the flags.
Yeah.
I'm not saying cut the waving the flags, make it a bit bloody smaller, right?
Yeah, I think it's really tiny. Like you have two spaces where you're going to put a lot of workers into. Even as you set up the game, I think 16 black workers, which are the policemen, are placed into the castle of Montjuic or something. You place them there, and the circle is so small that you can't read what it says. You just see a bunch of these black meeples on there, and they're always in danger of spilling over into another part of the area. It just this in itself is not the flaw that I'm criticizing, but what I'm trying to get across is this is symptomatic of generally valuing the art, valuing the visual aesthetic over functionality.
They seem to forget, and we had an argument about this when we were playing the game today. George just doesn't agree with me. He's perfectly allowed to not. That was a sentence.
Yeah, and also it's totally not a bad joke you've rediscovered now.
But I think the standard of board game art and graphic design, and that balance between the two, that balances functionality and aesthetics, is pretty bloody high by this point. Mm-hmm. You see some games that have strange decisions. Dogs of War is one. Its art style is strange, but it's not unusable. It's usable. It's functional. It's just odd. And so when we see something that has just gone too far in one direction, Food Chain Magnet, put some bloody colour on your board. Don't just photocopy something and expect me to pay 80 quid for it, right? Barcelona goes in the other direction. It has this gorgeous art. It wants to feature it, but it sacrifices functionality.
Yeah.
There is a great example, and I'll just go on this because this is the one thing that really narks me. So you have cards, and they're building cards. And there are certain ones that have in-game effects.
One specific in-game effect.
One specific in-game effect. And once you know it, but you still need to read the card to know it. And every card you draw has a quote from a notable Barcelona hero of the age. I don't know who they are. Notable Barcelonians. And this quote is huge, and it dominates the card. Mm-hmm. Then the game instructions are tiny. And this is not me being a grumpy old man. They're bloody tiny. And I know you want to convey the history of the game, but no one's reading that flavor text. Everyone's going straight to the game instructions and finding it difficult to read. It's misguided.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's somewhat misguided. I think if you have a certain affinity for the age, for the setting, as I mentioned before, I think you will take your time to read the quote the first one or two times. Or, all right, this guy, I remember the quote. It's a nice quote. It means something to me. We are not the target group that, these quotes appeal to. They're interesting. If you don't have anything to do right on your turn, you look at them.
Some of them are. I mean, some of them, like, the bread is the blood of the people. I mean, that's great. But I mean, literally, some of them is civil engineering is vital in the construction of a socially cohesive city. Things like this. And I'm reading this thinking, Yeah, I know this guy's probably very famous, and if you read a history book on Barcelona, but my God, you chose this quote from him?
But that's the point. That's what I was alluding to in the one sentence review. It tries to make a statement, it tries to be about something, but it tries to do it on top of the game as opposed to through the game. And I think this is a missed opportunity. I agree with you that they are too tiny. There are a few other misprints, if you want, or errors of judgment when it comes to graphic design. Like some of these cards have these head tokens, but they're only applicable at the very end of the game. I think the first 2 games or so, we actually made the mistake of applying the effects of this head symbol each time such a card was played, completely breaking the game because they're on the card. They're right under the symbols that you use every time you play that card. So why would you use that head symbol that's right under it?
Right.
Like these small mistakes, these oversights that have been done that just seem to suggest that the providing a strongly tied together experience wasn't top priority for the game's developer.
It's conveying the history of Barcelona.
Yeah.
Should we go on to the design then?
We probably should.
All right, so how about this? You take a tenuous grasp of reality, a lot of condescension, at least 4 cups, and a slow-wittedness masked through pretensions of prolixity.
Well, that's you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's design.
I found that once you struggle through the graphic design and art encumbrances that are a barrier to the game's pretty good.
It is,
It's solid, and it makes me want to play it again. I think about it and I think, I see what I did wrong there. That's always good in a game design. So this is a game that squeals for a second edition, and I would recommend they do one.
It definitely does. I think the experience, because we're just talking about the sort of superficial experience. I think the experience itself, 2 points I want to point out. One, it's a really simple game at its core. You have 4 cards in your hand, you play them, you place them. There's an area majority concept going where you try to control certain blocks and try to have the highest prestige, but then to sort of set up a better hand next turn. But then you also want to play these buildings that send a lot of people into the Raval, possibly onto the barricades, damaging you in later turns, but they will score you those beautiful, beautiful victory points that you want. And it's easy to play. Once you get this hurdle going, once you get past all these issues and these problems, once you wrap your head around the game, it plays smoothly, and you can see strategies, you can see clever moves, you can see how you can play cards to outmaneuver somebody else, you can see how you can play cards, you can read the board and go, all right, this area I'm not going to take this turn, I will try next turn. And it really opens up a lot of strategy and tactical decision making that is fun and it's engaging. Still, it took us 4-5 games until we got there, and I'll be perfectly honest, part of it why I kept going through it was because I spoken to the designer before. It was very nice to me. I knew him from outside of this game. We've had great chats before, and I didn't want to trash his game until I gave it a full chance. I don't know if a lot of people would do the same, but to some extent it's worth it, but you really have to struggle to get there.
You really do.
Playing this made me want to play.
So, Georgios.
Yes, Ben.
Games sometimes make you want to play other games.
Always, but in this case, we have an extra, segment.
Well, we have a conceit, Georgios,
we do.
that we have to maintain. So
we are very conceited.
Tell us, what did Barcelona, the Rose of Fire, make you want to play?
I'm going to take the cheapest possible answer possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
Double possible there.
Yeah, that opens up all kinds of options. And it made me want to play Suburbia.
Okay.
Which, not for the superficial reasons of both being kind of city building games, but because I think Suburbia does something very interesting in the way it kind of, you're planning ahead, not just, what can I afford, but also what kind of buildings do I need? When do I need them? How do I move ahead? You do have a very strategic, you need a very strategic view of what you're doing. It's not enough to take the best option right now. You need to plan out. You need to arrange them the hexagons in the right way. So if you do spend your turn turning a a tile into a sea, you get a lot of money out of it, so it's worth it. And this kind of planning ahead, this idea of how do I position myself so I can draw better cards next turn is present in Barcelona as well. And this is how they kind of remind me of one another. Yes, superficially speaking, they're both about city planning, but Suburbia is dry to the point of being almost self-aware in its silliness.
It seems a complete conceit to me. I think it's absolutely aware of its dryness.
Yeah, it's kind of winking at you, but we might not notice it because it's so slow. Yeah, this is sort of where saw the peril, why I kind of want to follow up Barcelona, which is kind of hard to get into, but very nice to look at. And then you go, you're really, really plotting a lot in Barcelona, and you're plotting quite a bit in Suburbia as well. So I think those two probably go well together.
I mean, for me, it's a game I've been thinking about a lot because I bought it and then I played it and I loved it and we reviewed it and I haven't played it for ages. And Barcelona, I think they're not similar games, but I think they scratch similar itches, and that's Nippon.
All right.
And I haven't played Nippon for so long, and it's really great. It's a wonderfully designed game. It's really innovative, but it has that feeling of being the master over the destiny of an area. Nippon is bigger, it's a country, but it still has that same idea. I mean, here you're city planners, here you're businessmen, but guiding the destiny of a new land. And they both scratch that itch. And I think Nippon is better, but then again, I haven't played Barcelona really enough to be able to say that with full confidence. And I think they would be a couple of games on a night that would be really satisfying. I mean, you'd need, a cigarette and a sleep afterwards, but, two well-intentioned and also well-designed games. So, Georgios,
yes,
should people go out and buy Barcelona Rose of Fire?
It's a difficult decision to make.
Really difficult.
I'm going to say if you have any affinity for Barcelona, for Catalan history, if you have any affinity for this time period, I think you're going to get a lot out of it. A lot more than I think I did when I first played it. If you're willing to spend a few games just figuring things out and then realizing, it's not that difficult. It's just, this tiny bit is just sending me on the wrong path. This is just confusing me. This I need to ignore, even though, it has no place being there. If you're willing to put in the effort, I think you'll be rewarded with a game that is satisfying, that is interesting, and it's ambitious in what it tries to do. Not as a gameplay experience, but as a way of celebrating and communicating history and culture. If any of these things appeal to you, then yes. If, on the other hand, you just want a good game, you just want something to put down, to play with your friends, it's a bit clever, I think, probably not. It probably needs some refinement. It needs a slight polish, like a printing that gets rid of some of the mistakes, a rulebook that's slightly rewritten without losing a lot of its historic flavor, but it needs some tightening up. Maybe not a second edition, although that would definitely help, but it needs some tightening up. Maybe 2 more weeks of development and you would have a really, really strong game. Now it's a diamond in the rough.
This game, you need to go on Board Game Geek, you need to get player aids, you need to get people explaining it, you need to read on the forums. That's effort.
Yeah.
This is a game that is unfinished for me. Not in terms of the game itself, not in terms of the artwork, but in terms of the whole package. It needs to be refined because you have big barricades that you have to jump over before you can enjoy it. Once you get over those barricades, the game's great. It's a lot of fun, really enjoyable. So I would be unsure whether you should buy it, but if you're willing to go on BGG, read the forums, and get the idea clarified in your head, especially then to translate it to the people you're going to play it with, it's a game worth playing.
I agree.
As we record this, Georgios, winter is shuffling out of the way to allow spring to come through and take their coat off and make themselves comfortable. And I sit here and think, I can't wait to see the leaves on the trees, the smiles on the faces, and the booze all over my face as I pour it on my face.
It's your outros are so artistic, especially the way you used face and followed it up with another description of face.
I rhymed it with face.
It's amazing.
Do you know what the rules are for rhyming?
It's use the same word.
Always rhyme with the same word.
Always, yeah.
Them's the rules.
I remember your hip hop career in the 90s. You don't talk about it, but I remember.
Fatty cheese.
Fatty cheese.
So, how do people contact us, Georgie?
They can go to our website, infoperfected.com, which has written stuff like reviews. And
I did a review of Cottage Garden.
Yes,
which
you did.
is not a lot of men having sex in a park.
Well, now I don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that's why the sales bombed.
Go to InfoPerfected, read some stuff we've written. You can Twitter at us. InfoPerfected, which is Ben, and PerfectedInfo, which is I. And then we have our email, which is infoperfected@gmail.com. Then we have Facebook, which is Perfect Information, basically. You can like us on Facebook. You can talk to us on Facebook. At some point, we are actually going to do something interesting on Facebook, but maybe not this week. And then we have Instagram for pictures of board games.
And I took a picture of Bruges, but not the board game, George, just the real place. I was really in Bruges, and I thought it was applicable.
Yeah, but you were wrong. What else do we have? I think that's basically it.
But don't forget, Georgios, the Guild.
Yes, the Guild, of course.
2348, the Guild of Perfect Information. This is where we talk to you, and maybe you get a shout out on Los Shows. And I've started a new initiative, Georgios.
You did?
Every new member,
yeah,
when they join the Guild, I will just automatically transfer them 8 geek gold to buy a Perfect Information micro badge.
Brilliant plan.
And you can wear your Perfect Information love with pride or shame or lust, whichever which you choose.
Yeah, whichever sin you choose, take the right deck and use your avatars properly.
Exactly. So, and also we talk about this all the time, but this is the beggy bit.
Ah, yes.
We have a support button on the website if you want to throw us a couple of quid to help us covering hosting, improve our sound, that sort of thing. That
maybe one day I can afford a second sock.
It's not going to happen, Georgios. And also you don't have a tail, so there's nothing to cover.
Yeah, but I'm wearing out my sock.
Also, you don't need to give us money.
No.
We'd like you to, but you don't have to. You can talk to your friends. You can go on Reddit. You can go on Facebook. You can go on the board game group on Facebook. You can mention us on your own podcast. You can have us on your podcasts. And also, we've currently, believe it or not, offensive Nelson Mandela in spite of impression.
Wow, that was almost an English sentence.
We've been nominated for this year's Golden Geeks.
Actually, to be fair though, by the time this show goes out, I think the voting it's still going for about 4 hours. So if you're listening to the show 4 hours after it went live,
go there, vote for us.
You probably missed the point, and we don't blame you for missing it, but we're kind of suspect why you didn't came up with the idea yourself to vote for us on Board Game Geek.
Well, I've got a friend who speaks with a bit of a Russian accent, Georgie, and he's monitoring all the people who vote and who doesn't, and I know if you don't vote, I know, alright? And my Russian friend, well, he might pay you a visit to the sushi shop.
Wait, now, why sushi shop?
Litvinenko, Georgios, it was a Litvinenko reference.
Right.
They killed that fella in the sushi shop in London with the with the radioactive metal in the sushi.
Who eats sushi from Russians anyway?
Yeah, a weird Russian sushi shop. Bloody terrible. It was all just borscht flavoured sushi. It was dreadful. Anyway.
Yeah.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
No, I'm going to be all revolutionary and wear my red shirt.